You're in a meeting, a conversation, maybe just a family dinner, and someone says something, one sentence, maybe even just one word, and you feel it. That flush of heat in your face, the sudden blankness in your mind. Every intelligent thought you just had completely disappears. And later that night, in the shower, you finally think of exactly what you should have said. The French call that feeling l'esprit de l'escalier, the spirit of the staircase. The perfect words that only arrive after you've already walked away. The Stoics had a different name for it. They called it being conquered without a sword. But here is what this video is going to give you. 7 phrases so grounded, so precise, so rooted in 2,000 years of tested philosophy that you will never scramble for words again. Not because you've memorized a script, but because you'll understand something about human conflict that most people will never see. Stay with me. The Stoic diagnosis: why you react. Before we get to the phrases, we need to understand the problem at the root level. Because if you only memorize clever responses, you'll still lose. You'll just lose with better vocabulary. Epictetus, a man born into slavery, whose leg was broken by his master as a demonstration of power, wrote something that sounds almost too simple to be revolutionary. Men are disturbed not by the things which happen, but by the opinions about the things. Epictetus, Enchiridion. Read that again slowly. He is not saying cruelty doesn't exist. He is not saying harsh words have no impact. He is saying something far more radical. The wound and your suffering from the wound are 2 entirely separate events. One was done to you, the other, and this is the Stoic claim that changes everything, the other is done by you. Marcus Aurelius, writing privately in his journal, a journal he never intended anyone to read, put it this way: you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations. Here is what this means practically. Every time someone's words destabilize you, something specific has happened inside you. You have made what the Stoics called a false assent. You have agreed, automatically and unconsciously, that this person's words have the authority to define your reality. The 7 phrases in this video are 7 ways of withdrawing that false assent. 7 ways of saying, to yourself and to the world, I decide what lands, and I decide what doesn't. The architecture of an argument. Here is something most people never see about arguments. Every argument has 2 layers. The first layer is the content, what is actually being said, the facts, the claims, the accusations. The second layer is the energy, what the person is actually trying to get from you. Your anger, your defensiveness, your scrambling justifications, your visible pain. Here is the hard truth. Most people who attack you with words are not interested in the first layer. They want the energy transaction. They want to see that they got to you. The 7 phrases you're about to learn operate at the second layer. They don't just answer what was said. They starve the energy the other person was actually after. And once you understand that, once you really feel the difference between these 2 layers, arguments will never feel the same way again. Phrase 1. I may be wrong. The philosophy, oikeiosis, belonging to truth over self. 3 words, and I want you to sit with the discomfort of them for a moment, because every instinct you have is telling you that saying, I may be wrong, is weakness. The Stoics believed the exact opposite. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, commander of armies, the most powerful man in the known world, wrote this to himself. If someone is able to show me that what I think or do is not right, I will happily change, for I seek the truth. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations. He wasn't performing humility. He was practicing one of the most demanding Stoic disciplines, oikeiosis, belonging to truth rather than to ego. The Stoics taught that your mind constantly generates what they called phantasiae, snap judgments, instant interpretations of what's happening around you. and they taught relentlessly that untested impressions are the source of almost all human error. Here is what makes this phrase so powerful in an actual confrontation. The person challenging you wants to provoke your ego. They want you defensive, rigid, contracted, fighting to protect your position. Because a person defending their ego is predictable, manageable, ultimately weak. But when you say, "I may be wrong," calmly, genuinely, without performance, you remove the target they were aiming at. You give them nothing to push against. And you signal something that unsettles every aggressor. I am not afraid of being wrong, which means I am not afraid of you. Pause. Let it breathe. Phrase 2. Silence the philosophy. Prosoche, self-watchfulness. This is not technically a phrase, but it is the most powerful response on this entire list. Seneca, writing to his young friend Lucilius, buried this line inside a letter about choosing your company wisely. Retire into yourself as much as you can. Associate with those who are likely to improve you. Seneca, Letters to Lucilius. His method of withdrawal from destructive conversations was not argument, it was silence. Here is why silence is devastating in the Stoic sense. When someone attacks you verbally, consciously or not, they are seeking a transaction. They want your energy, your fear, your anger, your scrambling justifications. That energy is the fuel that keeps the exchange burning. Silence starves the fire. But not cold silence, not pouting silence, not the silence of someone who has no answer. Stoic silence, which is something entirely different. It is the silence of someone who has heard what was said, evaluated it, and found it insufficient to require a response. Marcus Aurelius practiced what he called prosoche, self-watchfulness. Part of that practice was noticing the impulse to fill every silence with self-defense and asking, does this moment require my voice, or does it require my presence? When you respond immediately and emotionally, you show someone a map of your buttons. But when you meet their provocation with silence, you reveal nothing. You remain, as the Stoics would say, free. Phrase 3. That's an interesting perspective. The philosophy, diastema, creating interval. This phrase requires the most discipline of all 7 because it asks you to do something genuinely difficult, to engage without evaluating, to acknowledge without agreeing. Epictetus opens the Enchiridion, his handbook of Stoic practice, with the foundational distinction that governs everything we're discussing. Some things are in our control and others not. Epictetus, Enchiridion. That's an interesting perspective. Is that distinction turned into language? It does not say you agree. It does not say you disagree. It takes no position whatsoever on what was just said. What it says is, I have heard you. I have registered that you hold this view, and I am choosing deliberately not to make it my problem. The Stoics had a concept called diastema, distance, interval, the space between the impression and the response. This phrase creates diastema in real time. It is a firewall. Now, and I want to be precise here, this response must be genuine to be Stoic. The Stoics had no time for manipulation. If you say it while internally seething, you have learned nothing. The point is to mean it, to genuinely position yourself as someone who finds the diversity of human thought interesting rather than threatening. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself, surrounded by people whose opinions he found wrong, whose politics he found corrosive. When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. But I have seen the beauty of good and the ugliness of evil, and I recognize that the wrongdoer has a nature related to my own. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations. That's an interesting perspective, is that recognition made audible. CTA. Ask viewers, what situation in your life would this phrase completely change? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. Phrase 4. Let me think about that. The philosophy, logos, the rational faculty. We live in a culture that has made speed into a virtue. React in real time. Never let a moment pass without filling it with your opinion. The Stoics identified this tendency 2,000 years before social media, and they called it one of the most reliable paths to hamartia. Error, the missing of the mark. Seneca wrote, "I will keep constant watch over myself, and most usefully will put each day up for review." Seneca, Letters to Lucilius. The daily review, the evening examination that became a cornerstone of Stoic practice, was built on one premise: time reveals what haste conceals. Let me think about that does three things at once. First, it honors logos, the rational faculty the Stoics considered humanity's most divine attribute. A rushed response is just impulse and ego speaking before reason has had a chance to assemble itself. Second, it signals something genuinely disarming to the other person. You take them seriously enough to actually consider what they said. Most people enter a confrontation expecting a fight. This response removes the battlefield entirely. Third, and this is the subtlest point, it creates space to practice what Marcus Aurelius called hypomene, patient endurance. The willingness to sit in the discomfort of not having an answer yet, without escaping that discomfort with noise. The historical record of Marcus as emperor shows this pattern again and again. When facing difficult disputes, he asked follow-up questions. He requested time. He slept on decisions. His contemporaries sometimes found it maddening. History vindicated him entirely. Phrase 5. You might be right. The philosophy, eunoia, genuine goodwill. Notice the difference from phrase 1. That was inward, I may be wrong, an acknowledgement of your own fallibility. This phrase moves outward. It extends genuine openness to the other person's position. Zeno of Citium, the founder of Stoicism, reportedly taught that a philosopher who enters a debate hoping to win, rather than hoping to learn, has already failed philosophically. Regardless of the outcome, you might be right carries power for a reason that has nothing to do with strategy. When you say it genuinely and without agenda, you model what the Stoics called eunoia, goodwill, the sincere desire for the other person's thinking to actually illuminate something real. And people can feel the difference between that and performance. Instantly. Seneca wrote, "The first step in becoming good is to want to be good." Seneca. The parallel in dialogue is this: the first step in having a real conversation is to want to be changed by it. If you enter every exchange already decided, if your mind is closed before the other person finishes speaking, you are not conversing, you are performing. And the Stoics had no patience for performance dressed up as philosophy. Think about the last time someone genuinely changed your mind. What made you open to it? Almost certainly it wasn't the force of their argument that moved you. It was the feeling that they respected you enough to actually want you to understand. They weren't trying to defeat you, they were trying to reach you. You might be right is how you give someone that feeling, even in the hardest of conversations. Phrase 6. This doesn't require my reaction. The philosophy, prohairesis, the faculty of choice. This one is rarely spoken aloud. It is primarily an internal response, a Stoic intervention you perform on yourself in the half second before you say something you'll spend hours regretting. But sometimes, said calmly and without drama, it can be said out loud. And when it is, it carries real weight. Epictetus returned obsessively to the concept of prohairesis, the faculty of choice, the will, the part of you that decides what to engage with and what to let pass. He considered it the very essence of human freedom. Everything else, your health, your reputation, other people's opinions of you, he placed in the category of ta ektos, external things, things not ultimately yours to control. This doesn't require my reaction is an act of prohairesis. It is you exercising the one freedom no one can ever take from you, the choice of what to give your energy to. Here's the scenario. A colleague dismisses your work in front of others. Your face flushes. Your heart rate climbs. Every instinct says defend yourself, explain, push back, make them look wrong. The Stoic pauses and asks one question. What is the best outcome I can produce in the next 60 seconds? And what is the best outcome I can produce in the next 60 days? Those answers are often completely different, and the Stoic consistently chooses the longer view. This doesn't require my reaction, said or unsaid, is the choice to play the longer game. It is not passivity, it is strategy elevated to philosophy. Natural pause. Good point for a subscribe CTA. Phrase 7. Thank you for telling me. The philosophy, amor fati, the love of fate. This is the hardest one. Not because it requires the most words, it's only 4, but because it requires the deepest philosophical grounding to actually mean. In Book 1 of the Meditations, where Marcus lists the people who shaped him and what he took from each of them, he thanks his philosophy teacher Rusticus for showing him that his character needed improvement and discipline. He thanks his grandfather for teaching him gentleness. He thanks a man named Sextus for modeling what it looks like to live conformably to nature. What is remarkable about this list is its honesty. Marcus is not thanking the people who made his life easy. He is thanking the people who made him better. Those are not always the same people. The Stoics practiced a discipline called amor fati, the love of fate, the full embrace of what happens rather than resistance to it. Nietzsche borrowed this concept from the Stoics, but its roots go all the way back. Thank you for telling me is amor fati in conversation. It is the recognition that critical feedback, unwelcome truths, even hostile criticism, all of it contains somewhere inside information. Data about how you're perceived, about what you might be missing, about the gap between your self-image and the image you actually project. Epictetus was clear. Evaluate feedback with reason. Not every criticism is valid. But he was equally clear that the automatic impulse to dismiss feedback, to react with hostility to anyone who offers it, is one of the most reliable signs of a person who has stopped growing. Seneca wrote, "Gather and save the thoughts which may help you in time of emergency. A day belongs to you when you have gathered what it offered, including the difficult things." Seneca, Letters to Lucilius. Thank you for telling me is how you gather what a difficult moment offers. It is the most Stoic phrase on this list, and it is the one that will transform you most, if you actually mean it. Why knowing is not enough. I want to be straight with you here, as I try to always be on this channel. These 7 phrases do not become yours by watching a video. They become yours through what Epictetus called ascesis, training, the daily exercise of the philosophical muscle. Marcus Aurelius did not write the Meditations because he had mastered Stoicism. He wrote it because he was still practicing, every single day, despite being emperor, despite being surrounded by war, corruption, plague, and loss. He wrote it to hold himself accountable to the person he was trying to become. That is what we are doing here, not collecting information, building a practice. The 3-step Stoic method. Here is the actual framework the Stoics used when they felt a reaction rising inside them. It takes less than 5 seconds. With practice, it becomes automatic. Step 1. Pause. The Stoics called this apoke, suspension of judgment. Before you say anything, before you even decide what to say, pause. 1 breath. This is not weakness. This is the act of putting reason before impulse. Step 2. Diagnose. Ask yourself, what does this person actually want from me? Content or energy? If they are looking for an emotional reaction, identify which of the 7 phrases starves that need most effectively. Step 3. Respond from principle. Choose your phrase not from emotion, but from your understanding of what this moment actually requires. Speak calmly, briefly, then stop. The Stoics knew that every unnecessary word after the right one is a step away from strength. Start with one. Here is your assignment. Not a suggestion, an assignment. Pick one of these 7 phrases, the one that feels most foreign to you, because that is almost certainly the one you need most. Tomorrow, in the most ordinary context you can find, not a crisis, not a major confrontation, just a regular moment where you feel that old pull to react fast and defensively, try it, genuinely, and notice what happens inside you when you do. Then come back and tell me what happened in the comments. That is what this channel is for, not just learning about Stoicism, living it. Closing, full circle. We started with a feeling, the flush of heat in your face, the blank mind, the perfect words that only arrive too late. We've covered 7 phrases tonight, not tricks, not weapons, philosophical positions, each one rooted in ancient wisdom that has survived precisely because it works in the hardest moments of an actual human life. Phrase 1, I may be wrong, the courage of intellectual humility. Phrase 2, silence, the power of a response that needs no words. Phrase 3, that's an interesting perspective, the firewall of genuine curiosity. Phrase 4, let me think about that, the dignity of deliberate reason. Phrase 5, you might be right, the openness that disarms opposition. Phrase 6, this doesn't require my reaction, the freedom of strategic withdrawal. Phrase 7, thank you for telling me. The deepest Stoic discipline of all. There is a version of you that never scrambles for words again, not because you've memorized a list, but because you've internalized something deeper, that you are not your reputation. You are not other people's opinions of you. You are not your worst moment or your most embarrassing mistake. You are, as Marcus Aurelius reminded himself at the end of long days as emperor, a rational soul, capable of governing itself. And from that position, no word, no provocation, no human being on earth can silence you. Because you were never making noise in the first place. You were thinking. In the comments, which of these 7 phrases will be hardest for you to actually practice? Not hardest to understand, hardest to live. That's the real question. I'll be reading every reply. Until next time, stay grounded, stay rational. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Marcus Aurelius.